Hey traders, this is Jason with MotiveWave. Welcome to today's webinar, New User Orientation and FAQ. This webinar is aimed at new users who are looking to get up to speed as quick as possible. Some of the topics we will cover today are listed in the slide on the screen. And on top of that, throughout the presentation, I'm just going to go through some frequently given answers that our support team has answered recently in hopes that it'll help you get up to speed quickly. The webinar may seem a little random, but I'm just trying to cover the most asked questions in a single presentation. So I'd like to thank you all for taking the time out of your day to attend, and today's presentation will be approximately 45 minutes. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So there should be a Q&A button on the bottom of your Zoom controls where you'll be able to type in your questions. So do so at any time, and I'll try to get to those at the end. If you're watching this webinar on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe. Before we get into the content, I'll just go over a quick disclaimer. There is substantial risk of loss in trading commodity futures, options, stocks, equities, cryptocurrencies, and foreign exchange products. Futures and options trading has large potential reward, but also large potential risk. You must be aware of these risks and be willing to accept them in order to invest in the markets. And please don't trade with money you can't afford to lose. And I'll just mention that MotiveWave has a 14-day risk-free trial, and you can sign up at motivewave.com. And this segues into the main content of the webinar. So in order to use MotiveWave, you will need to sign up for our 14-day free trial. And you can do this from our website, motivewave.com. There is a free trial link at the top navigation menu here, and you'll just need to enter your name and email address, read and agree to our terms of service and privacy policy, and then click the green button here to submit your information. You'll then be emailed the license key. So this email may end up in your spam folder. Just be sure to check there as well. So now that we have our license key, let's just download MotiveWave. We can do that by clicking the download in the top navigation. And then depending on your operating system, you'll either select Windows, Mac OS, or Linux to start the download. And I won't go over the installation or startup options in this webinar, but we have a previous webinar named Getting Started with MotiveWave. It's on our YouTube channel, and it goes through the installation process in more detail. So let's take a minute to talk about connections. So first thing I need to mention is that MotiveWave does not provide a data connection. You will need to connect your account at one of our supported data feeds or brokerage connections. You can go to the connections page on our website, and you can see the supported connections and the asset classes that the connection supports, along with the operating system that it will work on. So recently we've had some updates regarding our connections. First of all, I want to mention that OANDA, which is the Forex and CFD connection, will no longer be supporting a connection to MotiveWave. So this option has been removed from the recent releases. In the future, we will be looking at adding another Forex/CFD broker option, but at this time, we don't have details on which one that'll be. The second connection related item I want to mention is that Tradevate has now officially stopped supporting third-party connections, such as MotiveWave. So you'll not be able to connect your Tradevate account to MotiveWave any longer. And we remove this connection option from our platform. And lastly, I want to give an update on the new Schwab API. We are waiting on a test account to test the new Schwab API. Until this time, we will not be able to release the Schwab connection. We are hoping that this will happen very soon, and it is a high priority item for us. So one connection related item that we've never discussed in a webinar is the Rhythmic Gateway setup. So if you're wondering what that is, it allows you to connect multiple trading platforms to a single Rhythmic login. And this is done through the RTrader Pro trading platform, which can be downloaded directly from Rhythmic's website. So all you have to do is go to rhythmic.com and select download software. You'll note that they have an RTrader and then an RTrader Pro platform. You need to use the Pro version in order to use the gateway functionality. And I just want to mention that this is the gateway is not required. You can connect MotiveWave directly to Rhythmic, no problem. This is just strictly if you want to use multiple trading platforms at the same time connected to your Rhythmic account. So let's go ahead and do that now. So what you'll need to do is start up RTrader Pro. And at the startup splash screen here, you'll need to enter your user ID and password in both the orders section and the market data section. You'll need to select your system. So for right now, I'm just going to be using an Apex account. So I can set that to Apex, and gateway, I'm just going to use Chicago. That's what you'd use for anyone in North America. And the most important part is selecting this allow plugins option. So if it's not selected, it'll be gray. If it's enabled, it'll be yellow. You can also click the remember me button up top here. That's going to remember your login details for next time. And then all you have to do is click the login button there. And this may take a few seconds, kind of depends on the Rhythmic servers. And I just want to mention that when you're using this gateway method, you need to keep RTrader Pro running in the background. So hopefully this fires up quickly here. It's fairly normal for it to take, up to 20 seconds to run. There we go. So now we have RTrader Pro running. We can keep that minimized if we want, and we can start up MotiveWave. So I've already created a Rhythmic workspace. So I'm just going to assume that you already know how to create a workspace. If not, we have some video resources available on our YouTube channel and our website. So what you do now is click continue. And you're going to be presented with the Rhythmic login. So you use the same username and password. Whichever gateway you use, so you could use something like, Hong Kong or whichever one you use is fine in RTrader. But in order to connect within MotiveWave to the Rhythmic gateway, you need to have this set to Chicago. So make sure that's set to Chicago. And your system, we're using Apex. So we'll go ahead and use that here as well. And just a quick note, that if you're running any of these trader funding programs or prop firms, as some people like to call them, they're all going to be available here. So you'll need to select your specific one, whether that's, Top Step, we have MES, Lilu, Apex, et cetera, et cetera. And if yours isn't listed in here, you'll likely use the paper trading option. And if you have a live account, like a live Rhythmic account, you'd use the Rhythmic 01 connection. Okay, and the most important thing when using the RTrader gateway is under market data, you'd normally have this set to non-aggregated or aggregated. You need to set this to RTrader gateway. Now we can click connect. So now we successfully have RTrader Pro feeding MotiveWave with the market data. And at this point, you'd be able to connect any other trading platform to RTrader as well and share that data. One other thing I will mention about Rhythmic, if this is your first Rhythmic account, you will be required to sign the market data agreements before you can proceed with data or trade execution. Sometimes this is done via the broker's website, and other times you may need to do this in RTrader itself. In order to do this in RTrader, you'll find this in the file menu. So go to File, Agreements and Documents. And then you can click the, let's see, the market data subscription agreement here. You'd read through it. If you agree to it, you can sign it. Click OK. As you can see, we've signed both of these, so we're OK. So you'll definitely need to do that if this is your first time using Rhythmic. And one final thing about Rhythmic is that MotiveWave does not currently support multiple Rhythmic logins in a single workspace. So let's say, for example, a user wanted to have multiple logins, one for Apex, one for Top Step, and they wanted to copy trades between all their accounts. Currently, this is not supported in MotiveWave. However, we've received a lot of feedback on this, and in version 7, we will be trying to add the option for multiple Rhythmic logins in a single workspace. I think that'll be really helpful for a lot of users. Okay, so let's jump in now to the platform. So for the purpose of this webinar, I will be using the Ultimate Edition, and by default, all free trial users will be using the Ultimate Edition as well. So some of the features mentioned today may only be available in specific editions. So I'll try to mention if that's the case. In regards to workspaces, the professional and ultimate editions are available to add multiple broker connections to a single workspace. So for example, you could have a CQG and a Rhythmic connection in one workspace. And this can be done by creating the workspace initially and adding multiple connections, or you can just modify a workspace at a later date and add the other connection. The lower editions will only be able to connect to one broker per workspace. So that would be the standard edition and the order flow edition. And as a side note, you can open multiple workspaces at the same time by launching multiple instances of MotiveWave. So in Windows, it's actually quite easy. You would just double click the application shortcut again, or what you can do if you have the application in your Windows taskbar, if you have a middle scroll wheel, if you hover over the MotiveWave application and click your middle scroll wheel, it's going to launch that application again. So that's a handy little tip there. And in Mac OS, it's actually a little bit more difficult. They make it kind of painful. You need to go in and open up your terminal application. So you find that in your App Store. And then in the terminal application, you'll need to enter the following command. So you need to type open space -n space -a space MotiveWave. And what this is asking to do is open a new application of MotiveWave. So that's how you can do that on Mac OS. All right, so now that we're in MotiveWave and we've maximized the console, on Windows, the first time you start up, it's going to maximize the console and cover your Windows taskbar. I have this setting already enabled. So what it's going to do is completely cover your taskbar, which a lot of people don't like. So if you'd like to disable this, go into your Configure Preferences menu, which is this gear icon up here, and then select Use Native Windows. So what this is going to do is just readjust MotiveWave. It's going to actually, when you click OK, it's going to ask you to restart the platform. So restart MotiveWave, and then it's going to open up looking like this. So you'll be able to view your Windows taskbar. Okay, so let's quickly take a look at some of the menus at the more important items. I won't go through all of them because that would take forever. But in the File menu, we can take a look at the backup options. This will allow you to create a manual workspace backup. And then the restore function would obviously restore that backup file that you created. Just a quick note, your passwords, your login and passwords are not saved in a backup. That would not be very secure, so we don't do that. By default, MotiveWave will automatically back up your workspace on every single shutdown, and will keep the last 10 backups. And if you'd like to see the folder location for these backups, you can go back to the Configure Preferences menu, just expand this a little bit, and go to the backup tab, and then you'll see the folder where it's located here. So you could restore those at any time. Okay, so the View menu, let's jump over to the View menu. The View menu has first option that's important would be the components. So you can go View Components. That's going to show you kind of all your components or your drawing tools that you may want to access. If we go to View Object Viewer, as we can see, the shortcut key is Alt+V as well. So this is going to show you all the chart and drawing objects, the studies as well. So you can see here we have a volume imprint on the chart and a simple moving average. Another useful item in the View menu is the Lock Studies feature. So, by default, MotiveWave ties the studies to an instrument. So if you switched the instrument in your chart, these studies wouldn't carry over. So let's say I have ESM4 up here, and I wanted to switch to, NQM4. These studies wouldn't stick to the chart. If you enable this option, it will, so you can cycle through different instrument, and it's always going to keep those same studies on the chart. So that's kind of a handy little option to have. And the study menu will show you some of the studies in various different groups here. So these are not all the studies though. I think there are quite a few that are missing from here. If you want to see all the studies, go to all studies at the top, and you can filter through all the available studies here, which on Ultimate Edition, it should be 300 plus studies. In the configure menu, from workspaces, we can modify, delete, or create a new workspace. The instruments dialog will allow you to view all the instruments that are currently loaded into your workspace. So these are not all the instruments that are available to you. It's just the ones that we've preloaded into the workspace just to get you up and running quickly. And you can create a custom instrument from here. You can define a new instrument. You can delete an instrument if you want to. One quick note though, be very careful when deleting instruments. If you do, it will delete the instrument along with all analysis you have, and any open charts with that symbol will also be removed from your workspace. So if you do accidentally delete an instrument you didn't mean to, you can always just restore a previous workspace backup to recover that instrument and all those analyses. So next up in the configure menu, we have active tickers. So active tickers will just show the instruments that are currently subscribed to receive market data. So this is useful as many brokers limit the number of active tickers you can have at once. For example, interactive brokers, I think their limit somewhere around 100 active tickers. And an active ticker would be any open chart, any position, open position, any watch list item, any alert. And you can't delete an active ticker from this dialog. You would need to remove the, let's say, watch list item or chart manually. So you'd have to actually go in and let's say you could close the energies watch list item here, and now all those items there would be removed from the active ticker list. All right, so let's jump next to the preferences. We'll just open this up. The preferences menu will be all of your workspace preferences, and you can kind of think of this as your global preferences, as some of these items can be overwritten on an instrument or chart level. This menu could have a video all on its own, so I'm not going to touch on too many things here, but the most important things are for new users would be a simulated account. So you could enable a sim account for practice trading. And if you select the sim trade only option, it will not allow trades to be sent to your broker. So this is nice to have so you don't accidentally select your broker account in the DOM or trade panel and place a trade you didn't mean to. This will block that from happening. If we jump over to the theme, you can set, your chart or bar theme colors to any custom colors that you like. Under chart settings, we have a max days tick chart setting. So this will limit the charts that use tick data to 10 days by default, and this can be increased. The bar size selector here. So this will be the bar sizes that are shown at the bottom of each chart. So you can add and you can remove them. You can even add non-linear bar types there. So that's kind of handy. The toolbar will allow you to customize. So if you select the top toolbar, we can customize what's in our top toolbar. We could add a left toolbar by enabling it here. We could add a bottom and a right. So that is also a handy little tip there. And let's jump over to historical data. This one gets asked quite a bit. So the intraday bar build method here is used to set the global default. And this is the time at which your bars will start building. So for example, our hourly bars would start at 9 a.m. and they would go to 10 a.m. But if you prefer the hourly bars to start to build at 9:30 a.m. going to 10:30 a.m., this can be changed. And this can also be set on a per instrument basis. You can do this by right-clicking the chart, selecting Edit Instrument, and then over on the intraday bars tab, you can set it here, and that'll just be set for that instrument. All right, so let's dive into the charts and layouts. So take a quick look around the MotiveWave console. We have chart tabs or panels up here. We have a watch list bottom left corner here. We have orders panel on the bottom right. Any of these panels can be added by clicking the plus icon. next to an existing chart or watch list, and you can see you can add, chart, watch list, DOM panel, order book, time and sales, etc. At the bottom of the console, we have a list of pages. For example, we have home, charts, floating, account, etc. And you can use these pages to separate your workspace however you see fit. New pages can be added by clicking on this plus icon here. And all you'd have to do is give it a name and select a predefined layout, which can obviously be changed. And you can actually drag and drop these pages to reorder them if you'd like. If you'd like to copy one, right-click it. You can select copy page. You can edit the page name. You can export a page or import a page. Or if you'd like to close it, you can just kind of hover over it and click the X next to it. So, all right, so that covers pages. So I guess let's talk about layouts next. So there are two types of layouts in MotiveWave. The docking framework, as seen here, and then we have a floating layout as well. That's on the floating page. We'll just touch on that in a few minutes here. So let's look at the docking framework. With a docking framework, you can move your mouse in between two panels until you see the double arrow, and you can kind of resize any way you see fit. And you can also add new panels. And you can click and drag the tab up top and move it anywhere you like. And you see this blue coloring here. This is going to tell you where the panel is going to be placed. So we can put it above this other chart, below the chart, along with the chart. And then you can resize as you want from there. And the second layout type is called the floating layout. So I'll just jump over the floating page here. So these panels, we actually call them stations, can float freely anywhere on the page, and they aren't linked to the sides of other stations. So the panels will not resize or change size, of the, the stations will not resize when you resize the console itself. So when you do resize the console like this, when you're in the docking framework, everything kind of scales accordingly when you resize. On the floating pages, they stay the same size no matter what. So that can be kind of handy for some users. Other users may not really appreciate that at all. And you can enable or disable this snap to grid. You can see the windows want to snap to this grid that exists there. All we have to do is go into the configure preferences menu, over to dock, and we could, let's say, decrease the grid spacing if we wanted to, or we could uncheck snap to grid. That's going to allow us to just move them freely however we want. And if you want to add a new station, all you have to do is right-click the background, select new station, and then let's say watch list. We could open a watch list and move it anywhere we want. So this is the floating layout will allow you to create a highly custom layout. I would say it probably adds a little more flexibility than the other layout type. So just depending on your needs, you may prefer this over the other. All right, so let's jump back in to the console here. Another important piece down the bottom left corner, we have a Wi-Fi symbol. This is your connection indicator. If you have multiple connections in your workspace, there will be a symbol for each connection. And you can hover over top, and it's just going to display the connection name and the status. And if the symbol is white, it means you're connected. If the symbol is yellow, it means you're disconnected. And you can actually double click the symbol itself to manually disconnect and reconnect that particular connection. Next to that, we have a quick selection for linking and unlinking your charts. So this is just the same as the linking colors up here, just in a different location. And in the bottom right-hand corner here, we have the date and time. So this will just be taken from your computer clock. The gauge to the left of that is the memory gauge. So it's just going to show the amount of memory Java is using and the amount of memory it has reserved. The trash icon next to that will run the garbage collector. So this will try to free up some memory being used. But this is done automatically in the background all the time. So you wouldn't normally need to use this, only if your workspace, if the gauge started to turn yellow or red, that means MotiveWave has used up all the memory that that is available to be reserved. And at that point, if that keeps happening, there might be an issue with, let's say, a custom study that you have on the chart, or in some way the program is being overwhelmed. So if that's the case, I would urge you to contact support. So that'd be support@motivewave.com. And then we can try to look into the issue with you and hopefully resolve it. Okay, so let's move on to instruments. So by default, MotiveWave will load a list of instruments into your workspace, as we saw in the configure instruments menu here. We do that just to get you up and running quickly. This list will depend on your broker or data feed you're connected to. And a quick note on symbology. So MotiveWave uses the native symbology for each connection. So for example, Rhythmic in interactive brokers, the S&P E-mini futures contract would be ESM4 right now. But on CQG, the symbol would be EPM24. So you need to be aware of your specific connection symbology. If you're not quite sure specific symbology for your connection, send an email to support and we can hopefully help you out with that. And if the instrument you want is not currently in your workspace, you can add it by searching. And this is done using the magnifying glass icon in the top toolbar. So this will search the specific broker or data feed API for the instrument. And if you have more than one connection in your workspace, you'll be shown on the top toolbar here. And if, excuse me, I lost my place here. So you can also search for an instrument by adding a new chart. So if we wanted to, let's say, add a new chart, we can click this little magnifying glass here, and we can search a specific connection for that instrument. Another method you can do is with this symbol dropdown. So this symbol dropdown menu will just list the instruments that are in your workspace. So as I said, you can search for new instruments using this, but we do not recommend this method for the simple fact that if you try to add an instrument that doesn't exist in your workspace, MotiveWave by default is just going to use the first connection, and it's going to grab the first result, which may not be the correct exchange you're looking for. For something like interactive brokers, you may have 4 or 5 different exchanges available to you on a certain instrument, and it's just going to grab the first one. So not the best option. We would recommend using the magnifying glass. And if you find this drop-down menu a little unwieldy, you can go to the Configure Preferences menu, go into Quick Search, uncheck Show All Instruments. And what you can do is just add these specific instruments that you normally watch or that you trade into this list here, and then they'll be the only ones that show up. That's a little bit of a time saver. All right, so let's jump over to a feature or concept of MotiveWave that can cause confusion for some new users is the analyses. So there are 2 types of analyses. We call them untitled analyses and titled analyses. So by default, MotiveWave opens each new chart as an untitled analysis. This means that all your drawings and studies on the chart will be discarded if you close that chart tab. So this kind of functions the same as most other trading platforms. So let me show you a quick example here. So we have ESM4. Let's say we want to add a study to it. We'll add the alligator study. If I went ahead and I switched the instrument to NQM4, and then I went back to ESM4, MotiveWave remembers that that symbol on this chart had the alligator study. But if I close this specific chart and I open up a new ES chart, that alligator study is now gone. So that's what we call an untitled analysis. And the other type of analysis is a titled analysis, which, as the name suggests, is given a title or a name, and they're saved within the workspace, even if you close the chart. So in that example, if I had a title analysis, I could close the chart and I could grab that analysis again just by opening a new chart and opening that analysis. So the title analysis are tied to the instrument, and you can create as many title analyses for that instrument as you like. The whole concept of title analysis was created for Elliott wave analysis, where you'd want to have multiple wave counts or hypotheses for each instrument. So you can create a title analysis by clicking this new analysis button here. It's just this blank sheet of paper. And we can give it a name. We'll call it the alligator. And you can base it on an existing analysis or just an empty chart. So we're just going to choose empty chart. And it's going to add this other chart tab here. We can go ahead and close the untitled that was there before. And you can see next to the symbol, we have the name of the title analysis called alligator. You can also find it in this dropdown. This folder dropdown here is going to show all your analyses. So we have the alligator right there, and then it's just going to automatically create a primary analysis as well. So if you want, you can import the analysis, you can export analysis for other people, and you can manage them if you want to. You can rename them, delete them, et cetera, et cetera. So one benefit of using a title analysis is that you could, let's say, have the same analysis and show it on multiple different charts. So for example, let's maybe throw the alligator study back on here again. And let's say I wanted to see this study on the 15-minute time frame, but I wanted to view it on, let's say, I don't know, a 5-minute chart. So what we do is we could set this alligator study to use the 15-minute bar size, click update. And then we could actually open this alligator analysis on another ES chart by going over to the chart, selecting the folder dropdown, clicking alligator, closing that untitled that existed before. Now we can see, excuse me, let's just go to the 5-minute. We can see the 15-minute alligator on the 5-minute chart. Or we could do other things, like we could open up our components panel here, and we could add support areas. So as you can see, any area that I add on the 15-minute chart is going to show up on the 5-minute chart as well. So that's a benefit of title analysis. All right, so let's keep this moving along. One very important study in the platform is the volume imprint study. So let's actually go ahead. I'm just going to get rid of some of this stuff here. And I wanted to mention that the majority of the volume inference features require historical tick data. So a good futures or equity data feed will be required for a lot of the features mentioned here. The Forex connections that we support do not have historical tick data, so therefore they are not a good connection type for detailed volume analysis. The volume imprint study is available on MotiveWave's Order Flow, Professional, and Ultimate editions. And that holds true for right after this, we're going to talk about the TPO study. So the same holds true for the TPO study. It's available on the Order Flow, Professional, and Ultimate editions. All right, so let's get started. If we want to add the volume imprint, we go to Study, All Studies, and search for imprint, and bring out the volume imprint study. So by default, the volume imprint study is going to be applied to the specific chart bar size. So that will be a 15-minute bar size. It's going to do 20 different profiles for each 15-minute bar. So we can go ahead, create that now. We're actually going to see, if we expand this a little bit, we can see these profiles being drawn. I'll just go ahead and remove the bars from the chart just so we can see the profiles. Let's bring this study setting back up so we can take a look. So we could add more profiles. Let's say we want to view 50 profiles. We could change the imprint count. The tick interval is just a tick aggregation. So if we wanted to aggregate 4 ticks into one price level, we can do that. So that will be, each price level will be 1 point on the ES in this case, or we can remove that. The column 1 and column 2. So this allows you to add profiles to the chart. So you could have one as a profile type and the other as, let's say, a bid ask if you wanted to. So you can have two side by side for the same bar. So let's quickly cover the profile type. So first one is profile. So that's obviously going to be a volume profile, as you see here. The next one will be bid ask. So let me update that, and then I'll just expand this a little further. So this would be what most users would consider a footprint chart. So the next option that we have is the ladder. The ladder is going to display the same information as the bid ask footprint chart, but it's just going to have a candle in between. So it's just a different way to visualize the data. Next up is delta. So this is just the delta at each price level. So that's the bid volume minus the ask volume. And then the last one is volume, which is very similar to the profile, but the volume will allow you to do highlight some unfinished auctions if you need to. So we'll go ahead, we're going to bump that back to profile. Okay, so one thing that you may want to do actually is create a daily volume profile. And it may not be so obvious right away, because when you add the volume imprint, it's going to add an imprint for each 15-minute bar. And what we actually want is one single profile for every day. So how we can do that is going over to the options tab and changing the bar size. So we just uncheck use chart bar size, and then we set this to 1 day. So what that's going to do is draw one profile per day instead of every 15-minute bar in this case. And we don't want to do 50 days worth. So let's just put in a number like 3. We just want to see 3 profiles. And since we're so zoomed in, I'm just going to auto scale us back out. And we can make some adjustment to this. And maybe we want to see more than 3 profiles. Let's take a look at 5. And you'll notice right now, the align method is set to middle. So it's going to draw this profile in the middle of the day, which can be kind of confusing. So for the daily profiles, I like to set this to start a bar. So what that's going to do is right at the start of ETH, it's going to create that profile. Display, one thing to consider is if you want to see the show open close bar here, I don't normally like to see that, so I would remove it like that. Other things we can do on the profile tab, we can set the color here, so we can change the color. What else? Let's throw the candlesticks on the chart, and you can see that the profile draws over top of them. So what we can do is draw the profile underneath the candles themselves by going over to the options tab, selecting underlay, and clicking apply. So I think that covers most of the volume imprint options. We do have other videos. We have another video, I believe it's called Introduction to Volume Imprint or Volume Imprint Overview or something like that. That's on our YouTube channel. You can check that out. I go into a lot more detail of all these different settings. The volume imprint study can do a lot. So definitely check that video out if you're brand new and you're interested in using the volume imprint or footprint charts or volume analysis of any sort. Okay, so let's actually take a look at the TPO study next. So I can go ahead, go to studies, all studies, and search for TPO. And I'm just going to add that to the chart. And I'm actually going to remove the volume imprint by right-clicking and selecting delete up top. So let's open up the TPO study settings here and take a look. So the time frame, it'd be fairly normal to set this to 1 day. Most people want to see a 1-day profile. The tick interval, again, is just the aggregation of levels. So we could aggregate 4 tick levels, so that'll be 1 point on the ES. The subinterval is just the period interval, so that'd be a period would be 30 minutes. As with most TPOs, it's always 30 minutes, so you definitely want to leave that. Number of TPOs, pretty self-explanatory. The use historical minute bars. I would say if you're not using the volume profile, definitely keep this checked. So this is just going to use minute data instead of tick data. Since TPO is based on time, we don't really need tick data unless, of course, you're using the volume profile. So one thing that I want to talk about first is the IBR, the initial balance range. So we have an opening range of 5 minutes on there. We can disable that. And then we have an IBR range. So the two, what that is referring to is how many sub intervals. It may not be very obvious, but so if a sub interval is 30 minutes, this IBR range is set to 60 minutes right now. I'm just going to remove that right now. And let's talk about what's on the display tab here. So we can have a gradient showing on our TPO profiles. We can disable that. We could color the bars any color we'd like. One thing we can do is split the regular versus extended session. So if I enable that, click apply, what we're going to see is there's one separate profile for the overnight session and then a profile for the RTH session. So that can be kind of handy. We can add the point of control and we can set it to either time-based or volume-based. Most likely you want to be set to time-based if you're using TPOs. Another thing is the constraint width option. So let me go ahead. Let me just compress these bars here so that some of these profiles overlap. So if you have overlapping profiles, you can actually come in to the display tab and enable this constraint width. That's actually going to shrink those profiles that are overlapping, which is kind of handy to have. Next up, we can enable the letters. So once I do that, and let me just zoom in a bit here, we can see the actual letters for each period. Let's see, the open and close markers. So that's just the open of the day and the last price, the last price or the close marker. So we can disable those if we want to. We have various other things such as midpoint, point of control line. We can add a single print option. So this is just going to project a line forward from single prints until it is intersected by a bar. So we can see this. Where was a single print coming from? Right here. And it wasn't intersected until this section right here. And in the future, we will be adding an option for the single prints to stop right at the profile. What you'll notice is it actually stops at the bar. So it can be kind of confusing if you have no bars set. It kind of seems like it ends nowhere, but it's actually ending right on the candle where it's intersected. So that's something to take note of. I believe we'll add an option to end it right at the profile itself in the future. We already talked about IBR value area. You can enable a value area if you want to for your profile. Volume profile, we can actually show this right next to. So you can have them back to back, which is kind of handy. You can see, okay, well, here's our market profile and here's our volume profile. And then we have the option to add a value area as well. Next up, we have sessions. So this is just if you want to, let's say, add custom colors for certain times a day. So you can add them here and just going to color those bars during that time period, a certain color. And just a quick note on this. This isn't actually your local time. So these session colors here are set to the instruments exchange time. So just be aware of that. That can be kind of confusing. And one last thing I'll touch on, so let me update this. One last thing I'll touch on is actually the ability to split and merge profiles. So what we could do is we can right click on the actual TPO itself, and then you could select, let's say, merge with previous profile. So this is going to merge the 2 days profiles together. We could do this again, merge with previous profile. So now we have 3 days there. If we want to clear that, we right click again and select clear merges. Now let's say we want to expand a profile. So we could right click and select align letters. That's going to just expand the profile. So you can see each 30-minute period separately. And if we want to clear those, you just click clear aligned letter TPOs. And the last thing that you can do is you can split a profile. So you could find a specific time, let's say D period right here, right click it, and it's going to say split profile at this date and time. So you could do that. You could split it here. And it's just going to draw a line from where you split it, the close of where you split it, to the open of where it opened up the next profile. And then if you want to clear those, right click again, clear splits. All right, so let's move on to a few more quick tips. Just a couple more here. So if you'd like to view the extended session, which is pre or post-market trading in equities, all you have to do is right click the chart and select show extended data. So this is just a toggle. If I select it again, I'm just going to be showing RTH data. If I want to see ETH data, select it, and it's going to toggle ETH on. One other thing you can do for troubleshooting, let's say you have data issues, is the clear local data function. So you can do this by right-clicking the chart and selecting clear local data. So what this is going to do is going to delete all the locally cached data on your drive, and it's going to go and re-download it from your broker or data feed. So if you see data that's not quite looking right on your chart, try this as your first troubleshooting step. All right, so that concludes the presentation. That took a little long there, about 45 minutes. So if you have any questions, please let me know via the Q&A button. Looks like we have a couple already. So let me just take a quick look. Michael says, thank you for hosting. Perfect. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for dropping by, Michael. Okay, so can you trade multiple accounts, futures accounts at the same time, both using Rhythmic? James, hopefully I covered that. You may not have been around when I covered that, but not currently, not right now. This is highly, highly requested. So we've actually started development on version 7. And one of our top priority items is allowing multiple Rhythmic connections. We're going to implement Rhythmic's web API. It has a few drawbacks right now, so we're talking to Rhythmic and we're hopefully going to get those removed. So right now their web API doesn't support trail orders. So we're hopefully get those trail orders working before we implement their web API. And once we do that, we should be able to have multiple Rhythmic connections. Are there any plans to connect to Tasty Trade, Wayne? Thanks for the question, Wayne. At this time, I believe we looked into it and there were some restrictions. That is on my list to look into, Wayne. So during version 7, I'm going to take a look at some of the connections that we don't have. And Tasty Trade is another one. So hopefully if there's anything stopping us, we can overcome it, but we'll look into that one. Stuart asks, is there any way to do this part on a Mac computer? That was at 106. I'm not quite sure what part you're referring to on a Mac, but everything you can do on Windows, you can do on a Mac, unless you're referring to the use native Windows. This option is only available in Windows, because on Mac, you can just kind of resize. It shouldn't be covering up your whatever they call it on the Mac, the taskbar on the Mac. I can't remember now. Just the dock, I guess they call it. Anonymous asks again about multiple Rhythmic. Yep, we're going to be looking into that fairly soon. So as I said, we're starting development of version 7 now. So hopefully I would think we're looking in the months. It's not going to be like weeks, but it's probably going to be months. Gabe asks if is wondering if connection to Tradevate via CQG was supported. Not any longer. The Tradevate seemed, it was a little confusing. It seemed that they had stopped it for a little while and then they brought it back. And I think at this point, Tradevate has cut third-party connections off completely, as far as I'm aware. We can't. So we completely removed the Tradevate option. But Tradevate just uses a CQG connection, so you could just open up a CQG workspace, try your username and password in there, and see if it works. There's nothing really special about the Tradevate. It's just using CQG. We have a question here. Can you show us Elliott Wave and how it works? That's a whole nother video. Why don't you email support@motivewave.com. We'll send you a link. There's a link on our web, on our docs, that kind of shows you the multiple ways to use Elliott Wave. It's definitely a full webinar on its own. We do have some videos on Elliott Wave, so please check out our YouTube and our website as well. Will this be recorded? Yep. We will have this uploaded to our YouTube channel either tonight or tomorrow, or actually, today's Friday, so we'll try to get it out tonight. Yeah, same question, multiple people recording. I'll try to get this out today. David asks, can you make composites of more than one day? David, I'm not sure if you're referring to the TPO or the volume imprint. For volume imprint, what you could do is set this to 2 days. And it's probably going to go back and load a bunch of data, but this will give you a 2-day volume profile. I'm not sure if that answers your question. So we have a question here. How can one display the volume of each candle below the candle in extended hours? So there would be, I guess, a few different ways of doing this. So you could use the volume imprint study. And what you could do, let's just go back to the 15-minute bars here. And then you could go to the total section, show totals. Let's see here, and then show the volume. Sorry, I'm just gonna kind of get rid of all this other stuff on the chart. So if you're looking for an actual number, let me get rid of some of this other stuff here. So this could give you an actual number if you're looking for a number, or you could just use the volume study. But I assume that's not what you're referring to. So you could use a volume study like that. You could see the actual number by using the totals in the volume imprint. And that'll show, and you say in extended hours, yeah, that'll show for any hours you want. Just make sure your chart is set to, show extended data. Okay, Wayne asks, how can I place a trade directly from the chart? And does the entry and exits display on the chart in simulated trading? So to place a trade directly on the chart, you'd either need to have, let's go ahead and let's actually enable our simulated account. So we can place this on the simulated account. So open up a trade panel, and you're doing that just so that you can select, let's just remove that. You need to open up the trade panel or DOM just so you can set the chart to a specific account. And one way you can tell is you can go into the chart settings, go into your labels, and add account. Click apply. and it's going to show you the active account for this chart. So if I set it to the Apex account, it's going to switch there. So that's just another little trick. And in order to place trades directly from the chart, this changed, I guess, quite a few versions ago. But if you go to configure preferences orders, you can set it to a single click or a double click. By default, it's double click. So I can double click to add an order. And then what you can do is if you have the trade panel open, you could use an exit strategy like bracket 1 and place it just like that. And if we go back in here, you can see we have the double click set to create submit order. As I said earlier, you can set it a single click if you want. And then our old method we used to use was to create an order but not submitted. By default, that's disabled now. So what you could do is set that to single click, and this will be the old method where you'd click single click on the chart axis, and then you'd click T to transmit. So that's kind of the old method that we used to have. We found that having a single click like that, we'd have a lot of people entering orders in accidentally. So that's why we actually changed that over on the orders to a double click by default. So hopefully that answers your question. Nat asks, I've noticed it takes a lot of time for loading the volume imprint data. I'm using IBKR data. Yeah, that's the problem with IB Interactive Brokers data, is their data is extremely slow. Most people, if you're using volume analysis, I couldn't do it. It's just too slow. What a lot of people do is they'll get a data feed like IQ feed or DX feed and use it alongside Interactive Brokers. It's just too painful. I'm using Rhythmic right here, and you can see everything loaded up pretty quickly. We also have a backfill server for futures data. So our backfill server can fill quicker than, Rhythmic and CQGs. So we do backfill up to a fairly current time. So that helps out the loading process. Any plan to upgrade options chain in version 7 Anonymous asks? Yeah, I would love to. As most of you know, if you trade options and you've looked at our features, they're pretty basic, if I'm being honest. Most a strict options trader wouldn't be using MotiveWave to trade options. So yeah, there are some nice quality of life things that we'd like to add to the options chain. Will it get into version 7 or 7.1? I think there's a high likelihood at some point in version 7 we will have some updates there. Another question about Tasty Trade. We'll be looking into that. I believe we looked into it before. I can't remember if there's an issue with them not providing test accounts. I'll have to revisit that again in the future, but a lot of people are interested in Tasty Trade, so we'll look at that again. And then the API for Schwab. Yeah, I mentioned that early on, probably weren't around then, but we're just waiting on a test account essentially. Unfortunately, it's taking a while to get that account. So as soon as we get that, we fully intend to support Schwab. So that's high priority for us. So we'll hopefully get that in as soon as possible. I'm going to dive into the DOM orders, OCO bracket, not this webinar. We're kind of running out of time now, but we do have, if you go to our YouTube channel, just search for MotiveWave, you'll find our YouTube channel. I've probably done a webinar on order entry. So I think I have DOM orders in there, the OCO brackets, etc. So maybe take a look at that. Anonymous asks, can MotiveWave do a rolling volume profile? So the answer is yes. Let me quickly show you. So you have to use the volume imprint. And I'll give you a few caveats here. It may not be exactly what you want, but you need to go to the summary profile and you need to enable it. And we're going to set it to profile, align it to the right side. We'll set a width of, let's say, 300 pixels. And then the time span, we're going to do, actually, we're going to not touch that. And we're going to do a custom time span. And let's say we want to do, I don't know, a 60-minute rolling time span. So we can see that here. Actually, if what you can do, a little trick, which I didn't show, is if you want to actually add a summary profile, but you don't want to see any of these other volume imprints, you can just set the imprint count to 0, apply that, and they're not going to show on the chart. So what we have here is a 60-minute rolling volume profile. But one thing to note is it's not recalculating every second. It's going to drop off the old bars every minute, simply because running that calculation over and over and dropping off those old bars every second would be extremely overwhelming for your computer to handle. So I believe these, I could be wrong, but I believe these are dropped off every single minute. So the new data is added live, as it should, but the old data will be dropped off every single minute. So hopefully that answers your question. What can I do to avoid the loading message? I mean, you're going to have loading at the start. It depends on when the loading happens. You know, if you have a lot of imprint counts, if this is set to really high, if you have a good connection, let's say you're using CQG or Rhythmic, you shouldn't see a whole lot of loading unless you're updating the studies all the time. I would check this imprint count. Make sure this is set to the minimum number of profiles that you need. There's no sense in setting this to, 2000 if you only look at, 50 profiles. So set this to the lowest number possible. And if you have a serious constant loading messages, send an email to support@motivewave.com. Maybe send a video if you can, along with a workspace backup. And then we'll let you know if that's either expected or unexpected, and we can hopefully help you out there. Daniel asks, any chance of enabling a debugger on the horizon? Daniel, I'm not sure. You may have requested this in support. If not, send an email to support and we can get that answered for you. Stephen asks, how do I access your YouTube channel? So just go to youtube.com and in the top, there's going to be a search. Just search for MotiveWave and you should see our, let's see, youtube.com, search for MotiveWave, and then you'll see us up here. And then you can access all the videos right here. So these will all be in chronological order. Can you please show us where the keyboard shortcuts are listed? Yeah, sure. So you're going to find those in the Configure Preferences menu under General and then Keyboard. So there are a whole bunch listed here, and you can just use the filter. Let's say you wanted to find buy limit or buy market, just type in buy. I'm just going to filter everything with buy in it. All right, so we're kind of going over our time here. Probably just going to have to cut this off at this point. If I didn't answer your question, there are some questions that didn't get answered, so sorry about that. If I didn't answer your question, can you please email support@motivewave.com and we'll get those answered. There were a few questions that were maybe a little bit more complicated that I didn't touch on. So send an email to support@motivewave.com. And if it's a little more in depth, hopefully we'll be able to answer you there. And Greg asked, can you discuss a trade copier? I have it in a previous webinar. I believe I have the trade copier covered under, it may have been Discover What's New with MotiveWave. So that was fairly recent. If that's not it, send us an email and we'll point you in the right direction. All right, so I'd like to thank everybody for joining us in this presentation. Really appreciate it. Sorry if I didn't answer your question, but have a great weekend and good luck in all your trading. Thanks.